Hi everybody. I thought I'd go ahead and do a walkthrough of the table printer assignment. It seems to have caused a lot of confusion, and there are a few confusing things about it that you might have gotten tripped up on. We're going to start by taking a look at what exactly this assignment is asking of you. So if we take a look here at the assignment, which comes straight out of the book, what it does is gives you a set of data, and that's really just sample data. We should always assume that our programs should be able to handle a variety of data to make them much more useful. And it's going to print out that table, only it's not going to print it out in the fairly typical fashion where it would be across the top apples, oranges, cherries, banana, next row Alice, Bob, Carol, David. Instead, it's going to transpose it or sort of pivot it so that it's across the top apple, Alice, dogs, and then oranges, Bob, and cats. So that's one of the challenges of the piece. The other thing it's asking us to do is to make sure that the column widths are even. Not that they're the same, but that they fit properly so there aren't any ragged edges on the columns. So for instance, this one, as you can see, just when I pasted it into Google Classroom, it left ragged edges, right? So Alice starts here, but Bob starts over here. And so we want to find out how wide each one needs to be, and then use that rjust function to get there. So let's hop over to Visual Studio Code and create a file called tableprinter.py. And let's talk about the things we need to do. First off, I'm going to grab that sample table data so that I don't have to sit here and type it. And I'm going to clean that up just a little bit here. I kind of like things to be nice and even looking. All right, so here are the things I have to do. I need to be able to print the table, and I need to be able to figure out changing where this is, because it actually comes first, even though it's my second thought. I need to figure out the right widths for each column. Okay. So I'm going to start with printing the table because I think I've got the best understanding of how that should work. First off, what I have here is a two-dimensional list, so I want to know how to access each thing. If I want to get at apples, I'm going to print table data 0, 0. And if I print that and I run it, it prints apples. So the question is, which one do I have to change to get to oranges? So I'm going to change this second one to 1. So table data 0 is this list. Table data 1 is this list, right? So actually I'm going to go back and do it that way. Table data 0 is that first list, apples, oranges, cherries, banana. Table data 1 is the second list, Alice, Bob, Carol, David. So if I want to get to oranges, well, that's in table data 0, right? And then it is the index of 1 for it. Oranges, right? And if I want to get to Bob, well, that's in table data 1, and it is the 1 indexed item. Helps if I actually manage to choose the function key when I start it. And there it prints Bob. So that gives me a little bit of what I want. And then I need to loop through all the possible numbers in here to get at them. Now what I want to do is print table data 0, 0. And then I want to print table data 1, 0 and table data 2, 0. So let's start by figuring out the lengths that I want. I'm going to call it row count, because I'm basing this on the original data, equals the length of table data. And I'll print row count. I'm expecting it to say 3. And then my column count is going to equal the length of table data 0. This is one area where the assignment has made it a little easier for us because we get to assume that the inner lists will contain the same numbers of strings. So I don't have to go through and check each of them and do different things each time. I just get to assume that they're all the same length. So if I get the length of the first sublist, I'll have the length of all of them. And I'll print the column count. I'm expecting that to say 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice that I'm stopping and checking my progress along the way, making sure that I have the information that I want, and that I know what to expect before I test. So I got a 3, I got a 4, row count and column count. Those are correct. I don't need to print those anymore. So I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to get rid of that. And now I know those pieces. So the way I would normally do this is loop through each row, and then within that loop through each column. So I'm going to do that first for row in range row count. So that's going to count from 0 to 3, right? 0 to 2, I guess, 0, 1, and 2. And then within that, I'm going to do for call in range call count. And then I'm going to print table data row call. So the first time through, row is 0 and column is 0. So it's going to print table data 0, 0, apples. Second time through this one, row is still 0, but call becomes 1. So it's table data 0, 1. So it's going to be printing oranges. Let's see what this looks like. Apples, oranges, cherries, banana, Alice, but it didn't put anything in a straight line the way that we want. Remember that print has the ability to let us choose what the end character or characters will be. Right now, the default is that \n new line. I want to change it. I'm going to make it space pipe space so I can really see what's going on. And let's see what that does. Now it prints it in a line, but all in one line, and that's not what I want. What I want is after it's done its inner loop, I want it to then print a new line. So I can put that here in with the same indentation as that inner for loop. So it'll run the for loop, and then it's going to print nothing, which will be a new line. Okay, so I've got apples, oranges, cherries, banana, new line, Alice, Bob, Carol, David. That is almost what I want, except that it's printing it in the more traditional row by row, and I want to print it column by column. So really all that means is I have to change, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move the column there. I need to flip which is the inner loop and which is the outer loop. So instead of doing each row and then each column within each row, I'm going to do each column and within that each row. That's why I had to stick with numbers. So let's try that and see what we get. Apples, Alice, dog. Oranges, Bob, cats. Cherries, Carol, moose. Banana, David, goose. And that matches that printout right there. So that's along those lines. So now I need to figure out the right widths for each column. This is another place where the assignment gives us some hints. If we look here, we see that it says that you can use call widths equals a list of one item of 0 times the length of table data. What's that doing? Well, we want a list to start with full of zeros because I need, in this case, when I look at my printout, I need to know the right width for each column. So I need to know the number at each spot. That's a list of 3 items in this case. So I could do this just by doing 0, 0, 0 and get started that way because I know that I've got 3 items there. But I always want my program to be more flexible than what is immediately before me. So I'm going to put an S on there. Instead, what I want to do is say 0 times length of table data. And what that will do is make it be as many zeros in the list as there are rows in table data. Okay, and I'll go ahead and print call widths, make sure that I'm getting the values that I want, trash my output so that everything's nice and clean, and I get 0, 0, 0. Good. Now what I want to do is loop through each row. And within each row, I want to see what is the longest item. Okay. So that means that I'm going to do the 4 row in range row count. So I need that information first. So I'm going to move that up to here so that it's available to me everywhere. And then within that, I'm going to go through each item in the list. And I need to get the length of it. And you can get a length of a string the same way you get the length of a list with the len function. And if that length is bigger than whatever's the biggest one yet, the call widths at that spot, then I'm going to replace the call widths at that spot with this new value. So here's what that looks like. 4 row in range of row count. And then within that, I'm going to go for call in range of call count. Again, I need those numbers, so I have to use the range function rather than just saying for row in table data. If the length of table data row call, like it's this item in the table data, is greater than call widths at the row. This is where we start to get confused because we're transferring our columns to our rows. Okay. So I'm expecting in the end that for call widths 0, I'm going to have, what, an 8 for cherries, right? And for call widths 1, I'm going to have, what is it, a 5? Alice, Carol, David are all 5. And for call widths 2, I'm going to have 4, 4, 5, I guess, for moose and goose. Okay. So if this one is bigger than that, then call widths for that row now equals, use my copy and paste feature here, all that stuff, length of, and I need to close off that length there as well, which means I've got an extra parenthesis there. So what I'm expecting the result to be is it'll print 0, 0, 0 here, and when I do it again, it should print 8, 5, and 5. There it is. Now I know how big each column should be. Now I need to apply that. So that rjust that it mentions in here, rjust is a method of strings, of string objects, so you use it with the dot notation. Table data row call is the string I'm printing. Dot rjust, my finger's in the right place here. And I need to choose how far to push that. That's call widths at row. Whatever row I'm in, I'm going to print that one. That should not be a comma, that should be a dot. And with a little bit of luck, that's going to print my table the way that I want it to. Let me see how nice and clean that is now, with just a little bit of variation. The last piece that I haven't done for the basic version of this assignment is to turn this into a function. And when we make it a function, we want to bring in the data we need to process and either do what it says or return the value that is a result. This one is a printing function, so it's going to go ahead and create output instead of return a result value. So I'm going to define a print table, and I'm going to bring in table data so that I don't have to change the name of all this stuff. I don't want to rely on global variables if I can avoid it at all. And now there might be some confusion between table data and this table data. So I'm going to rename this one my data. And at this moment, this is super important, at this moment, my program does nothing. It creates this data right here in memory, and it puts this function into memory. And then the program stops and it all goes away because this defines a function, but I haven't called it. So now I'm going to go print table my data. And if I've done it all right, that should do it. There we go. I can get rid of my test prints here to clean it up a little bit. Apples, Alice, dogs. Orange, Bob, cats. Cherries, Carol, moose. Banana, David, goose. Okay, so that takes care of it. In another assignment, I'll take this challenge level on, or in another video. But for now, that gets us all set. I'll clean up my print call widths and my print call widths. And that is how you handle the table printer. We'll run it one more time. And for the sake of testing, to demonstrate that it works with a different set of data, I'm going to add on some values here. Let's say pomegranate. I should be able to change my data. Inigo Montoya. And I should be able to change my data, and as long as it follows the rules, it should still work out just fine. We'll call this rodent of unusual size. There we go. It still works out just fine. I get that extra row and everything's set. I could probably throw in Command V. Let's say we want some numbers in here. 83. I'm not going to turn them into integers. That would complicate things a little bit. 115 and 998. So it should print another row just fine. There it is. Got all my values down there, and everything prints exactly as is needed. All I did was change the data. I didn't have to change the actual function anymore. Thanks, guys. I hope that helps.